Welcome to Wicked Valina. I'm Valina. And looking at these wonderful hats, like a wonderful Christmas gift. I heard from an expert, a medical expert on pot, and it says that it does something, it shuts off your frontal lobe. That's the frontal lobe, that's your personality, that's who you are, your self awareness. And during the 50s, the 40s, the 50s, they used to cut that out and give you a frontal lobotomy to cure mental illness. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if this is what pot does to you, you're not self-aware. I can imagine it takes more than one or two joints to get to that point, I would hope. But the people who smoke these things and wear those hats, I can imagine there's a lot of pot smoking going on. Anyway, on to Linda Sarsour. Don't want to get anybody upset out there, but it is something to look into. It's an interesting fact that I just recently learned. I am every Islamophobe's worst nightmare. Linda Sarsour. You might have heard just how hypocritical the leader of the Women's March, who darned their vagina hats, actually turned out to be. It was no surprise to me, as I've been following her and Islam itself for a very long time. When you follow the sayings and doings of the Prophet, and there are many, you will note that when she says something in our understanding is hypocritical, it actually isn't. She's following the ways of the Prophet himself, how he treated women, lest we forget. Unless you have not heard, there's a thing called taqiyya in Islam. That is where a Muslim is allowed to lie to a non-Muslim to protect and further the propagation of the faith. I've gathered books, actual books, 13 Qur'ans, different translations, of course. Sahih al-Bukhari, Sunnah Abadaun, the sayings and doings of the Prophet, Raid Usalin, and the 101 Tafsir Ibn Kathir. Just so you know, those are the books you turn to when one is translating from Arabic. This way, every word is understood, every meaning, every context. There should be no discrepancy when following the tafsir. Yet in Islam, there's always discrepancies. Those gold-plated books in heaven with Allah should have been exact. However, side note, it could never be, as the Quran was not written down in Muhammad's lifetime, 22 years after he died. After Muhammad died, he left no heir to Islam. So it had its first war with itself. Yes, Muslims were fighting and killing Muslims in the first generation too. Before the war, hypocrites and apostates, those who left the faith in Muhammad's lifetime, were also killed. The war between the mother of the faithful, Aisha, Muhammad's favorite wife, the child bride, whom he married when she was 3, actually I think it was 6, and had sex with her when she was 9 and still playing with dolls. I mentioned still playing with dolls because if a little girl is still playing with dolls after she reaches her menses, then it's considered idol worship. So if she was still playing with dolls at the age of 9, she did not reach her menses yet. That's why Aisha, though she's called Mother of the Faithful, did not have any children. She could not become pregnant, because when you have sex with a child who is not developed or not fully developed, they become barren. So the child wife, the child bride of Muhammad, as he described her, having sex with a child, he says, was like eating a fine meal. He described each and every succulent bite. That's in the hadiths as well. I suggest you reading them. There was a war between her and the rightly guided Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the first one, not the one now, the head of ISIS. He named himself after this the fourth rightly guided Caliph. And so there was a war between Aisha's army and Abu Bakr. Since the Quran was not written down, each man remembered a piece of it. Abu Bakr believed Allah would never let one part of the Quran be lost. He felt his army was invincible. Sadly for him, most of it was lost, as most of his army, 700 men, and Aisha's died in battle. Hurriedly, what was remembered was written down on pottery shards, shoulder blades, and anything they could get their hands on. Uthman, by the year 754, ordered all Qur'ans be gathered up, as there were many different translations. He, in his quote-unquote wisdom, decided what should be in the Quran and burned the rest. So he kept one Quran. Imagine what was in the rest. Incidentally, Muhammad picked 5 men that the Quran should be learned from, and no one else. Uthman was not one. He has no right, according to Muhammad, to do such a thing. Sadly, Muhammad was dead. However, we have historical records and sayings and doings of the Prophet preserved in the many hadiths and sunnahs. Lucky us. They seem to coincide. When Muhammad was asked, who is the best generation of Muslims? First, the one where I am living in, then the one after that, and then the one after that. So it is no surprise when one asks, why are Muslims killing other Muslims? It has been done since the beginning. The inspiration behind the Women's March in D.C., Linda Sarsour, has been accused of enabling the alleged sexual assault and harassment of a woman who worked for the feminist activist. According to the victim and 2 sources directly familiar with the matter, allegations of groping, unwanted touching were allegedly brought to Sarsour during her time as executive director of the Arab American Association. In response, Sarsour, self-proclaimed champion of women, attacked the women bringing the allegations, often threatening and body-shaming her. These sources alleged the most serious allegations were dismissed. Azmi Fathelbab, the alleged victim, told the Daily Caller because the accused was a good Muslim who was always at the mosque, she oversaw an environment unsafe and abusive to women, says Fathelbab, a former employee at the Arab American Association. Women who put Sarsour on a pedestal for women's rights and empowerment deserve to know how she really treats us. Fathelbab is a 37-year-old New York native and was raised in a Muslim household. She was excited in 2009 to begin working at the Arab American Association of New York as a contractor. At the time, Sarsour was the executive director of the organization. Fathelbab worked for Sarsour for almost a year. Fathelbab claims the Arab American Association was an unsafe workplace where she was allegedly sexually assaulted, body shamed, and intimidated. Oftentimes, Sarsour was directly involved, according to the ex-staffer's account. The problems began in early 2009 when a man named Majeb Sif, who lived in the same building where the Arab American Association offices are located, allegedly began stalking Fathelbab. He would sneak up on me during times when no one was around. He would touch me. You could hear me scream at the top of my lungs. Asmi Fathelbab says the DC, he would pin me against the wall and rub his crotch on me. Asmi claims one of Majid's alleged favorite pastimes was sneaking up on her with a full erection. Linda Sarsour halts interview to yell at Daily Caller News Foundation. It was disgusting, she tells the caller. I ran the youth program in the building, and with that comes bending down and talking to small children. You have no idea what it was like to stand up and feel that behind you. I couldn't scream because I didn't want to scare the child in front of me. It left me shaking. The Daily Caller was provided with a link to Safe's Facebook and confirmed his identity, location, and employment. Fathelbab says she went to leadership at the organization to report the sexual assault. She alleges she was dismissed by Sarsour outright. She called me a liar because something like this didn't happen to women who looked like me, Asmi says. How dare I interrupt her TV news interview in the other room with my lies? Asmi Fathelbab says Sarsour regularly body shamed her and enabled Selfie's sexual assault. According to Fathelbab, Sarsour threatened legal and professional damage if I went public with the sexual assault claims. She told me he had the right to sue me for false claims, Asmi recalls, adding that the assaulter allegedly had the right to be anywhere in the building he wanted. Desperate after multiple dismissals by Sarsour, the distraught employee says she went to the president of the board of directors, Ahmed Jabbar. Jabbar told me my stalker was a God-fearing man who was always at the mosque, so he wouldn't do something like that. Fathelbab claims he wanted to make it loud and clear. This guy was a good Muslim, and I was a bad Muslim for complaining. A furious Sarsour allegedly raged against Fathelbab for continuing to report her sexual assault in the building. According to Fathelbab, her allegations will result in her getting written up for disciplinary action. She told the DC she was once forced to talk to a detective from the Community Liaison Division about the consequences of making false claims to the authorities. After Fathelbab's contract was up, Sarsour allegedly threatened to keep her from working again in the city. She told me I'd never work in New York City ever again, for as long as she lived, Asmi said. She kept her word. She had me fired from other jobs when she found out where I worked. She's kept me from obtaining any sort of steady employment for almost a decade. Two people who knew Fathelbab during her time at the Arab American Association spoke with the DC on condition of anonymity. but both corroborate her story, recalling that Azmi would return emotionally distressed in a panic from work, often describing it as an unsafe work environment. Another New York political operative who spoke on the condition of anonymity claims that Sarsour was a militant against other women at the association. This operative, who has worked for over 12 years with the Arab American Association, says they remember Azmi and witnessed her getting harassed in the building. They made it about her weight, saying she was not attractive enough to be harassed, and then swept it under the rug. It was Linda Sarsour, Ahmad Jabbar, and Habib Jodeh who took care of it. Habib Jodeh is the vice president of the Arab American Association of New York. The source even identified Fathelbeb, alleged assaulter, without prompting. Majed Sif, the man who lived in the building. The operative, who is practicing Muslim in the community, says a toxic culture at the Arab American Association led to the environment of harassment. It is always going to be the woman's fault over there, she alleges, and Sarsour was there to protect the men. She's not for other women. The only women she's for is for herself. Another New York political insider who has worked professionally with the Arab American Association for over a decade says this is not the first time they have heard of a complaint like this. Sarsour is the only feminist outwardly, the insider said, on the condition of anonymity. Due to the source's current political position, her interactions towards women in that building were atrocious. She would protect the patriarchy, and in return, they would promote her. Vahelbab's career has never recovered. However, after her nightmare at the Arab American Association, just wait until more people start talking, she says. Sarsour is no champion of women. She is an abuser of them. The DC reached out to both Sarsour, the Women's March organization, Majed Sif, and the American Arab Association for comment multiple times over the past 48 hours. Our requests for comment have been met with silence. We will update the post with any new information as it comes. An annotated account of sexual assault. Linda Sarsour supervised my sexual assault, and I cannot stand by any longer and watch everyone praise a woman that claims to be for women's rights and someone that fights for women when she herself allowed for abuse to occur to women. The Me Too movement angered me because it gave me flashbacks to things that occurred while working for a nonprofit in 2009. I was contracted under AmeriCorps to work for the nonprofit, the Arab American Association of New York, in Brooklyn, where Linda Sarsour was the acting director of the organization. The following occurred to me during that 12-month nightmare called a job. I was stalked to and from work and inside the building. I complained to a supervisor. There was a strange man stalking me, and was informed he did not actually work there but lived upstairs above the office. He would sneak up on me during times when no one was around, and, depending on what floor I was on, you could hear me scream at the top of my lungs. I would be thrown and pinned up against the wall by him. He had a tendency of sneaking up behind me to touch me. While this would go on, the acting director, Linda Sarsour, would tell me each time that I was overreacting, even threatened to fire me once when she heard me screaming from the second floor because this man came out of nowhere and touched me. According to Sarsour, something like that didn't happen to someone that looked like me, and no one would ever believe me if I told them. How dare I interrupt her TV news interview in the other room with my lies? I went to the president of the organization and was told my stalker was a God-fearing man who was always at the mosque, so he wouldn't do something like that, and that I wasn't hype anyway, so it was just making things up because I wanted attention. I was told this was a man who worked at the United Nations, and I was made loud and clear that whatever I was saying to defame his name could be used against me when he wanted to sue me. This was not the only story pertaining to Sarsour and what she does to women. This is one of many. I cannot stand by and watch women put her on a pedestal and not know the truth. Here is the truth. If you were in front of Linda Sarsour being sexually harassed, she wouldn't help you. She would try to shut you up for complaining. I know because it happened to me. Interesting to note, Linda Sarsour is for public floggings of rape victims, and the idea of removing the only democracy out of 23 Sharia-based Muslim majority totalitarian countries, which is Israel, of course. Linda Sarsour's beliefs are not just her beliefs. They come out of the teachings, as I said before, as I prefaced this report, out of the teachings of the Qur'an, the Hadith, and the Sunnah. Muhammad decided he wanted to divorce his wife Sauda because she'd become old and fat. So he sent a message to her. She waited for the Prophet on his way to see Aisha, his favorite wife, his child bride. When she saw him, she said, "I implore you by him who revealed his words to you and chose you above all his creation. Why did you divorce me? I have become old, and I have no need of men, but I wish to be resurrected amongst your wives in the last day." So he changed his mind, and she said, "I have given my day and night to Aisha, the Prophet's beloved." See Ibn Kathir 4:128. What she means by "I have given my day." The Prophet had up to 13 wives at one point, 9 at a time. Each lived in separate houses. Every night, he would go from house to house and have sex with each of his wives. So Sauda said, "When it is time for you to come see me, go see Aisha, your favorite wife, instead. I will give you my time," as she would spend no time with her husband, not even to speak to him, for he didn't want to. It displeased him to look at an old, overweight woman, much less have sex with her. So this ties in completely with what Linda Sarsour was saying, and the other people mentioned in this report were saying to her, "You're too fat, you're too old, you're too unattractive. There's no way a man would want you. And in Islam, because the saying, whatever the Prophet did or said, you must imitate. If the Prophet did it, then that's what you do. You find no value in the woman that you married. If she grows old and fat, you're out of luck. You're pushed to the side because that's what the Prophet did. This is not a religion for women, and you can understand why Linda Sarsour thinks the way that she does. In Islam as well, you must have the witness of 2 women for 1 man. Because a woman, according to Muhammad, women are too emotional, and she needs a second woman to correct her faults. Most likely the idea that women, because they have their menses, get emotional, or women, it has been thought through time, are crazy. So she needs a second woman to correct her should she be emotional. Praise be to Allah. What is meant by witness or testimony is something by which the thing testified may be proven and known to be true and correct. So it is information about it, with regard to the witness of 2 women being equal to the testimony of 1 man. Allah has mentioned the wisdom behind specifying the number of 2 as being that the woman may forget or get confused, so the other woman can remind her, as he said, and get 2 witnesses out of your own men. And if there are not 2 men available, then get a man and 2 women, such as you agree for witnesses, so that if one of them, the 2 women, errs, the other can remind her. Al-Barak 2:82. With regard to the phrase that if one of them 2 women errs, Ibn Kathir said, this means the 2 women, if one of them forgets the testimony, the other can remind her, i.e., she can remind her about the matter concerning which testimony is being given. Tafsir Ibn Kathir, Part 1, Part 724. Allah has commanded the testimony of 2 women so as to be sure that they remember, because the mind and memory of 2 women takes the place of the mind and memory of 1 man. See Ilam al-Walwaki in Part 1, Part 75. This does not mean that a woman does not understand or that she cannot remember things, but she is weaker than a man in these aspects, usually. Scientific and specialized studies have shown that men's minds are more perfect than those of women, and reality and experience bear witness to that. The books of knowledge are the best witnesses to that. The knowledge which has been transmitted by men and the hadith which have been memorized by men far outnumber those which have come via women. This has to do with gender, i.e., the gender of a man is more perfect than the gender of a woman. Allah says, men are the protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has made one of them to excel the other, and because they spend to support them for their means. Therefore, the righteous women are devoutly obedient to Allah and their husbands, and guard in their husband's absence what Allah orders them to guard, their chastity and their husband's property. They are their husband's property. and men excel women. And Linda Sarsour believes this wholeheartedly, except I believe she thinks she's actually a man, and this doesn't really apply to her. In regard to Sarsour's comment that women should be publicly flogged for being raped, imagine what it means in Jordan when women are raped, are considered to have compromised their family's honor. Fathers, brothers, and sons. In these cases, there must be 4 eyewitnesses, and the punishment must be carried out by the community, not by the family members involved. Honor killings are a part of a daily life. Jordan is one of the more lenient of Muslim countries. They're more progressive. Yet this still goes on in a more reformed country. Honor killings. The only way to rectify the family's honor is to have a wife, daughter, sister killed. Blood cleanses honor, the killers say. In the name of honor, a 16-year-old girl was killed by her family because she was raped by her brother. He assaulted her several times and then threatened to kill her if she told anyone. When she discovered that she was pregnant, she had to tell her family, and the family arranged an abortion. They married her off to a man 50 years her senior. When he divorced her 6 months later, her family murdered her. Muhammad was over 50 years older than Aisha when he had sex with her at 9. I hope you've learned a lot. There's more to teach. I won't go into the specifics of female genital mutilation, but Linda Sarsour said that such a thing does not belong in the Western world, and it does not belong in Islam, and it is not Islam, but in fact, it is Islam. I will give you, instead of telling you myself, I will give you a link to a video by Acts 17 Apologetics, explaining in detail with references. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe. There's more to come, and a Christmas special. How about a family Christmas story, an ancient Christmas story, where I actually have a connection to the real St. Nicholas. How about that? So please like, subscribe, and comment. I would just love that. Let me know what you think.